Welcome to the podcast, Let's Talk PWS, a series all about Prader-Willi syndrome. I'm Susie.
And I'm Katie. Let's start talking.
Good evening, listeners. Welcome to episode 12 of Let's Talk PWS. And today we are going to be discussing Effective PWS Support, Part 3, Consistency and Reliability. Again, a big topic. And again, welcome our good friends, Michelle and Neil from the Orange Hive. So let's start with, what is consistency and reliability? What does that look like in the world of PWS?
I think consistency is making sure that when you're talking about funded supports, like people who are coming in, but also working with families, that the person living with PWS, doesn't matter who's there, who's around them, who's supporting them, I'm going to get the same response. And I think it's vitally important to reduce people's anxiety. And give them then the ability to do whatever they're wanting to do. I think if you're talking about funded supports, it's about having routines. It's about having consistent information for people, making sure everyone's on the same page. But it needs to be the whole wraparound team. So if people are living at home, that's families too. If they're living out of home, that's the families when they're coming and seeing them. I think it's important to make sure that everybody's on the same page and consistent. And what that looks like for everybody is slightly different.
Absolutely critical about families being on the same page too. And unfortunately, we do know the stats are high for divorce rates with parents living with disability, and that is, it's come across my world, particularly that consistency of, opposing parents when they've got their own stuff going on, and, just keeping the consistency for the child is absolutely vital. So why is it such a critical part of strengthening the support?
I think when you look at some of the theories of mind that are out there for people with PWS, how they receive information and how they process information is different to those who are neurotypical. So I think actually having a bit of insight and understanding about how people receive and process information is actually vital, because, simple things where people think they're doing the right thing, like giving lots of choice, asking open-ended questions, can actually be really confusing for someone. And so then your responses can look quite different. So I think understanding some of those basic things, that if you're going to give choice, give 2 choices, 3 choices. This is how this person's going to best receive and communicate. I think, if you're consistent across, if families are consistent, all of the providers, which, people can have 4, 5, 6 providers involved. Yeah. If everyone's being really consistent with all of the information, it reduces people's anxiety.
Yeah.
They can process the information, they can interpret it, they can process their world, and that means they can make choices. They can go out and live the lives that they want to, because they're not too busy focused on other things. They're able to actually have the space in their mind to be able to actually do those things.
Yeah, so sometimes what you say, how you say it, really comes into play, particularly, auto processing. I know Stephanie, the speech, she said, she's got auto processing issues, and they said to me years ago, putting it in really simple terms, it's all, what you're saying to her is all coming to her in words that are really jumbled and possibly out of order. And, here we are just assuming they understand normal language that we're talking about. So sometimes consideration needs to be applied to simplify, or going back to nuance it to that said individual.
In terms of communication is vitally important. So a lot of times when we're working with someone with Prader-Willi, these are very highly developed young men or women. They're very intelligent, they're smart, they communicate quite well. Some of them can be very articulate. But when we're having a conversation with them saying, well, once we've moved a chair and we've done our morning routines, then we can have lunch, maybe the only word they heard there was lunch.
Yes.
Right? Not the other activities or tasks that we need to complete beforehand. And this is someone who has great receptive language. They're very articulate, and people then turn around and go, hang on, why do they respond that way and they're only thinking about food?
Yeah.
Because that's why we have to have that such consistency with in an ideal world, we would have the same staff turning up at the same time, the same day with great training.
Yes.
The same consistent training, and the training is done through all of their providers. So whether it be OTs, they're getting the same training because an OT might not understand Prader-Willi and how to work with someone with Prader-Willi. Speech pathologists, they're all getting the same training, and that would be an ideal world.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're not in an ideal world, are we?
No, we are far from it.
So we have to, as much as possible, and start with little steps. Like consistency could be when we've had a really, really bad day, we might have had a chair thrown or we've had a big argument, that the next day, if that person was rostered on the next day, that they turn up and they're just there. And that's consistency because they go, I've just had and the person goes, well, I've just had a really bad day yesterday and I've thrown everything I can at them.
Yeah.
And they've still turned up.
Yeah.
So therefore, the next time it's probably not as bad. They have that the anxiety goes away.
Yeah.
That person knows how to help me.
Yes. And to your point, they've shown up again.
Exactly. And that's on a basic level, that's consistency.
Yes.
At
and
its basic
reliability.
level. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, another way of seeing consistency or reliability is our kids really do trust what we say. So if they've looked forward to something like I think it was fireworks. We're going to go to fireworks one night, but it was freezing cold and, the festival was a bit dull and we left early. But we still have to, however we can, get to go and see the fireworks if we can, even if it's to go drive back and watch them in the car. Because all they're going to remember is that we kept our word. They have a real deep sense of justice. It's about right and wrong, like you didn't do this, but it's not to be mad at you. It's just because that was built into my today's routine, and they can become really crushed by just not being, and people don't understand how crushed they can be if you let them down. So for me, it's about never letting them down. Even if you can only do it in a different way or you can only do it in, a part of it, bend over backwards to do it because it's worth it. It's worth it for their deep sense of self, I think.
Yeah, well, consistency. Stephanie loves and obsesses all day long about her dollies, and we moved house, we moved states, and just part of the wash up, we had to make some brutal calls, and I left that in the hands of my now 22-year-old daughter, and under my instruction, I said, yes, get rid of some of those dolly clothes, and oh my God, I've never lived it down. Because that was her word, that's her consistency, and she still harps on about it, and I'm absolutely gutted that I've done that. But that just sort of demonstrated to me consistency for Steph.
Yeah, you'll never do that again.
And there are ways of being consistent, but also maybe do we need to have so many
yes.
And I'll use the dolls as an example.
Yeah.
So when we involve them in that discussion, then we're probably going to get a better. Do we, for example, I love that example of going to the fireworks. We when we first started out, we got the example of going to the beach on a Saturday. Yeah. Well, if it's -5 and snowing, no one's going to go to the beach. So it's about learning that communication beforehand. The beach will be on Saturday if the weather's sunny and it's this temperature and we can go. So having that, and then if everyone's using that same consistent language, then the anxiety goes away. There's less holes because one thing we do know with someone with Prader-Willi is they're brilliant at finding a weak link. They're finding the one person, and this is like normal everyday life. I know with my wife and my kids, Daddy takes us to McDonald's. Don't say that. I don't take you to McDonald's. But do you know what I mean? There's always that one staff member, or there'll be someone who goes, I think I know a bit better. They can have this or they can do that, or a parent or a family member or a grandmother goes, I need to fatten you up. Why aren't you having enough food? Yeah. So if we're all on the consistent message, and that we don't have to be hard asses about it, but how can we get them what they need and also help them, but also everyone having that consistent message?
Absolutely.
And I think too, which you touched on, Neil, is building some flexibility into what you're doing. That's vitally important. If you're planning something, this is what it might look like, but we might not know.
Yes.
Like there might be crowds there or there mightn't. We might have to queue up for a long time and be patient, or we might be able to walk
Yes.
straight through. So I think preparing people too is part of that consistency and that important messaging so that people sort of so that people are prepared with what.
That's one thing we've been actually, Michelle touched on it. We really focus on creating the ability to be a bit flexible. We were expecting to go somewhere and having an outcome, but that outcome wasn't there. So how can we maneuver to a different outcome and learning, because that can be learnt.
Yes.
And we have seen some examples of where we've been able to be flexible. We've turned up at an event and we got the wrong day or the wrong time. You know, the world could come crumbling down, but we're trying to develop those skills of flexibility that sometimes we might have to pivot to the left or right.
Yeah.
And how can we do that? So like Michelle said, it might be discussing beforehand, these could be the possible outcomes, all those sorts of things. But developing flexibility is something that we really try and focus on.
Yeah, absolutely, because some of those outcomes that are unpredictable when we do live in a very unpredictable environment, we go in there with all the great intentions of having a set routine and this is going to happen and that's going to happen, but sometimes it just doesn't. And how to mitigate that, you know, when it all just hits a fan and the epic meltdowns, which no one wants anyone to go through or no Pride Willie to go through. It's awful. Can we talk about the word no? Because that's, you know, we say it so often in our everyday repertoire, but, you know, saying no to a Pride Willie is just really waving a red flag to a bull in a way. And I know in our world we are really trying to educate supports to say get the point across, but say it in a different messaging, you know, sentence.
Yes, and I think it's actually a real skill. It's something that takes a lot of practice. And so it is a real skill that needs to be focused on. I guess my first thing to that is if someone's asking to do something, sometimes our default position can be, because we're trying to protect people or for a range of reasons, no can be the default.
Yeah.
I guess my first question is, can that happen for the person? How can it happen for the person? Does it need to happen a bit differently to how it might happen for others? So can it happen and what does that look like? And then if for some reason you need to, it's about reframing it.
Absolutely.
And I think having practice scripts for people,
yes,
and that applies to families too.
Yes.
Like actually sitting with siblings and parents and coming up with if something can't happen, what can we say? So that people have got some things already in their toolbox that in that moment they can pick out really quickly, because sometimes it's really hard to think on your feet.
Absolutely.
And so the more people can have in their toolbox that are prepared and that they feel comfortable using, the easier it is for people in those moments where they might need to be thinking quite quickly. And so I love having a bit of scripted phrases, just a handful of things that are prepared so that you can have responses ready to go. I think visual routines and visual supports can be a tool. They can be a tool for the person, but also for other supports. If something happens and someone's living at home and supports need to come in really quickly, if you've got something that's visual that you can go, well, I know you usually do this with mum, but she's not here and I'm going to do it and I can step in, you know, or if someone's living in accommodation in SIL, you know, if you've got a new support worker, if there's a visual, it mightn't actually be for the person living with PWS. It can be really helpful for the staff to say, I'm looking at this, I know we do this next. This is what we're doing now and then we're going to do this next. And I think the more of that sort of stuff you can have in place, the more consistent you can be.
Exactly. I think it's similar to food security. If they have a vision, if they can see and imagine what is happening or what's going to happen, they do tend to really cooperate with it because they love it. They're really looking forward to it. I found after COVID, Chelsea found it really hard to travel. So getting on planes and she was having meltdowns and trying to push in, and she'd just become really irritable and irritated about the whole thing. And then Michelle did a social story and took her through it. Okay, first we're going to park the car, and then we're going to go through security, and we're going to have a boarding pass. And Chelsea had a dream run ever since then, because you made it really clear in her mind about what the steps were. And so similar to food security, it's like giving them a visual of what is possible, because they're not in control of their routine or their food. Not really. I mean, if you're locking it up and stuff, but if you can give them something that they can really rely on that is absolutely going to happen, then that's their sense.
Another strategy I like to use when we start the day, we discuss what we're doing for that day.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we just have a general, and it's a general conversation. Oh, today, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Yeah, and we get that engagement, we get that feedback. So then later on the day, can we do this? We're not saying no. He said, remember what we discussed this morning?
Yes.
Was that part of our routine?
Yep.
Or another one is, if we do what you want to do, we won't get time to do.
Yes.
And then therefore they go, oh, you're right, and I really want to do those things. So then you're not saying no. We're putting it back onto a set parameter that we started at the start of the day, and we always have somewhere like a default to head back to.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Visual routines, completely. I mean, for years I was really annoyed about those things because, Steph would just flip them off and just go, doesn't work. But we've now employed technology, and we've got a product called, I'm not promoting it by any means, but we have got a product called Skylight now in her home, which is interactive. So because life, I always say life is not static. And here we are talking about consistency and reliability, but at least that's giving her I'm hoping that this will now forge some consistency and reliability for her, because every week she can see what's on her schedule. So every day the crew can go through and go, well, what are we doing today? Let's go back, and if there's any doubt later on or there's some confusion, we can go back to that. Remember what we discussed earlier today? We're going to EP later on today, and for lunch we're having XYZ. So I'm hoping that some behaviours will settle down because of implementation of consistency and reliability.
Yeah, it is like an anchor, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you can get, hey, Steph, can you show me the routine for today? Then all of a sudden she's in charge of her routine, which is there.
Yes.
So now she's having some control over it.
Yeah.
I got swimming at 11 o'clock, and then I'm doing this at 12 o'clock. Great.
Yeah.
You've told me that. So now the onus is back on them.
Yes, absolutely. Do you use your visual schedules at home with Chelsea?
We are starting to.
Yeah.
So with Michelle, that was the biggest one, was the meltdowns at the airport and travelling. It felt like we were never going to be able to leave the state ever again, because we just didn't know what was going to happen. And I think that having the visuals is something that gives you more of a known entity, and also if you feel like your child might have a meltdown, you have some backup plans as well. Have some escape routes or some ways out of it. So
yeah, and I like the idea of when we're talking about the support workers, and when you've got a cast of them or a full roster of them, having scripts is really important, because it doesn't come naturally to one's repertoire. And yes, you're right, Michelle, I think too often we default to no when there's so many different other ways of saying no. And then also thinking about, well, what am I saying no to? Am I saying no about myself, or am I saying no to Stephanie? And if I may just give an example where everything just went into just meltdown mode, but Steph wanted to go back to her old school, and the school was shut, and obviously the students weren't there. And I think the shift was finishing. They had enough time to go there, but the support worker decided to say no. But, I thought about it afterwards. Why did it matter? Because it shouldn't matter to you. This is what Steph wants to do. And even if it is closed, she can still walk around, and that's going to fill her cup. So, that example of that no ended up in behaviours. So that stuck with me for quite some time in terms of just coaching the supports around that, because A, it's not about them, it's about Stephanie, and B, a different way of, she could have framed that a whole lot better. But, we live with learn.
Yeah, and I think as a support worker as well, you do need to care about how they're feeling. So we went to the RSPCA on Saturday, and there just wasn't much to look at. It just must have been that all of the animals had been adopted or something.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, well, let's go to another one. So we spent a bit more time travelling further, but it was great because it meant that she really got to enjoy the animals regardless of we just we went the extra mile, and I think that's really, well, not for me, but it was for her to
fill her cup.
Because she really, I don't know, there's some real deep connection that she has with animals.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing, actually. And, if that's her happiest place, then we've got to spend as much time as we can there and don't feel so put out by the fact that,
I mean, it ties into giving them their reassurance, which is what they need constantly in their world filled with so much anxiety, angst, fear probably, just if you're consistent and reliable about sort of, playing into that within reason though.
But they appreciate it because after that we got in the pool and we did like 25 laps.
Yeah.
Like she's more than happy to do all the things and get the exercise because we're trying to get some, kilometres in the legs and the endorphins are the real, that's the real amazing thing.
We're talking about Steph, by the way.
Yeah. I support Steph on Saturdays. So when I go the extra and do the other, she really knows and she's like, right, I'm going to right back at you, and she'll just go harder at all the other great stuff that we need to do as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us, Michelle and Neil, and for the whole series of Effective PWS Support. Thank you for the strong support that you've shown to so many of our Prader-Willi kids and adults. We really appreciate you. And if viewers haven't missed any of these episodes, there are 3 in the series. So you can go back to our YouTube channel and find them there. And we hope that it helps you in your daily life. As we close tonight, don't forget to sign up as members at pws.org.au, where you'll also find ways to donate and sponsor our various projects and initiatives. Please remember to like, follow and share us on our socials. And until next week, let's keep talking.